The night was calm in the hospital. The monotonous sound of life support machines and the gentle steps of nurses were the only things filling the silence. But then, something interrupted the peace. The door suddenly opened and the hallway lights flickered. An imposing figure crossed the entrance. People could hardly believe what they were seeing. A majestic dark-haired horse with deep eyes burst into the hospital room, pushing the automatic doors open with raw power, as if they were made of paper. The horse moved with an instinctive urgency, completely ignoring the confusion around it. Astonished patients peeked from their beds and doctors looked on in disbelief, unable to understand how this animal had entered. A security guard hesitated before attempting to stop it, but the horse's eyes, focused on a destination that only it seemed to know, made the man back away, as if realizing that a greater mission was at hand. Every step of the horse echoed on the floor, reverberating through the corridors like an unstoppable march. There was no way to stop this force of nature. The horse didn't seem lost or frightened. It knew exactly where it was going. As cries echoed throughout the hospital, it turned precisely down the corridors, as if it knew every corner of that place. Perhaps it knew that in the ICU, a small life, Pietro, was hanging by a thread, covered by tubes surrounding his fragile body. Only the steady beeps of the machines around him were signs that he was still there, between life and death. Nurse Lara observed the baby with silent pain. She had been through many similar situations, but baby Pietro's case touched her deeply. Perhaps it was because there was no one there for him. No family, no parent to hold his little hand and beg for a miracle. Only a few minutes remained until the final decision had to be made. At the other end of the room, Dr. Vinicius, a man who bore the weight of saving lives and losing battles on his shoulders, prepared for the final act. His face, always so composed, now reflected a mix of exhaustion and despair. He knew they had done everything possible, but Pietro's heart simply could not hold on any longer. "We're here," Lara murmured, without expecting an answer. Dr. Vinicius sighed, his eyes fixed on the machine charts. He knew the time had come. Everyone in the hospital knew the last choice was difficult, but unavoidable. The decision to end life support was the only option left, yet the air in the room felt heavy, as if fate itself refused to accept it. The door to the room creaked as it opened. Inside, the darkness enveloped Yuri's motionless body, connected to the same tubes and machines that kept his son alive. He was there but simultaneously far away, trapped in a deep sleep, a coma that had lasted weeks. The silence was nearly suffocating, interrupted only by the controlled sound of the ventilator. To the doctors, Yuri was just another patient on a long list. But to Aura the horse, he was much more. He was the heart to which Aura had been attuned since the day they met. There was an inexplicable connection between them, a bond beyond words, beyond human understanding. In the darkness of his unconsciousness, Yuri's distant memories seemed to come alive like echoes resonating in his mind. He remembered the days when he rode with Aura through the fields, feeling the wind on his face, the sounds of the earth, and the strength of the animal beneath his hands. Their friendship had been forged in simple, yet intense moments, where shared silence had more than any conversation. Even now, in his lethargic state, Yuri felt Aura. He felt his presence, as if the horse were by his side, always waiting. While the hospital revolved around human and rational decisions, an invisible force, something no one there understood, connected father, son, and horse. It was as if Aura carried with him the last thread of hope, the only link between a life hanging by a thread and the promise of a future. Aura stood in front of the incubator, his deep eyes fixed on Pietro's small body. The baby appeared even more fragile under the hospital's cold light, surrounded by cables and tubes. There was an almost sacred stillness in the air, as if time had stopped. Nurse Lara, who was about to call security to remove the horse, hesitated. Something in Aura's presence held her back. He was not an intruder. He was there for a reason. For the first time that night, Lara allowed herself to believe that maybe there was a reason beyond understanding. Dr. Vinicius, however, did not share the same patience. He entered the room with undeniable authority, determined to resolve what he saw as an absurd disturbance. The imposing figure of the horse did not intimidate Vinicius, but before he could continue, Aura took a step forward. His eyes remained on Pietro, and something in the air shifted. The baby, who moments before seemed on the brink of death, took a soft breath, as if his body were fighting to grasp life once more. Lara and Dr. Vinicius stood still, staring at the machines. The monitors showed subtle but real signs of activity. The tension rose instantly. What was happening? Neither could find a logical explanation, but both knew they couldn't ignore what they saw. Pietro's breathing seemed to grow stronger with each passing second. The monitors, which had previously shown a death sentence, began to blink irregularly. With her heart racing, Lara couldn't take her eyes off the machines. The impossible was happening. Although her rational mind sought an explanation, nothing made sense. She tilted her head, focusing on the baby as if he could feel what no one else could. Dr. Vinicius, stunned, tried to gather his thoughts, checking the device readings and reviewing the wires and electrodes. Everything appeared in order, but the baby was responding. "This doesn't make sense," he murmured, still in disbelief. Lara took a step forward, her voice trembling with suppressed emotion. "He's coming back, Doctor. Pietro is fighting." The silence that followed was filled with an almost tangible meaning. For the first time, Dr. Vinicius allowed himself to feel something beyond logic. He looked at Lara, then at the horse, and back at the baby. Something beyond science was at play here. Lara had always believed that life had its own mysterious paths and forces, and in that moment, she realized she was part of this force. Aura was not just a lost horse or a symbol of despair. He was the invisible connection between Yuri and Pietro, a physical manifestation of a hope that neither could express alone. With a gravity in her voice she had never used before, Lara asked what they should do next. Vinicius, still trying to process the event scientifically, looked at the horse. Lara approached Aura, the horse that seemed to be at the center of it all, carrying something indefinable. Aura, with his massive body and tense muscles, stood motionless next to the incubator like a guardian. His eyes reflected something deeper than any animal could express. As if he were sharing a secret only he knew, Lara placed her hand on the warm skin of the horse, feeling his heartbeat slowly, almost in sync with the monitors. An invisible and inexplicable bond seemed to unite the horse with the baby. Dr. Vinicius, watching the scene from a distance, was torn between his scientific training and the unexpected reality unfolding before his eyes. He knew that the coming hours could determine Pietro's fate. For the first time in his life, Vinicius had no answers. He only knew that somehow, this majestic being had become the link between Pietro's life and death. Amid this, Lara felt renewed confidence, not in medicine or machines, but in something that transcended it all. Lara asked for more time. The decision was made in the deep silence of the night, as the hospital lights cast dark shadows on the white walls. In the room next door, something began to change. Yuri, who had been in a coma for days, moved a finger, a barely noticeable movement, but Lara saw it and held her breath for a moment. It was as if an invisible connection between him and Aura was being strengthened, fueled by something far beyond human understanding. Yuri, trapped between two worlds, fought to emerge from the depths of his unconsciousness. In his mind, hazy fragmented images of his life with Pietro emerged, and he knew, somehow, that he needed to be by his son's side. Aura turned his head, his eyes shining with an almost supernatural intensity. The horse took a step toward the door of the room where Yuri lay. As if sensing the call of his friend, the air grew dense, filled with an energy that made everyone in the room hold their breath. Lara exchanged a look with Dr. Vinicius, and at that moment, both knew that something beyond medicine and science was happening. The medical team prepared to make the final decision regarding Pietro. While an almost palpable tension filled the air, with a heavy heart, Lara held the baby's hand, trying to transmit all her love and strength. A newborn cry filled the room, and the decision seemed to have been made. The lights of the machines blinked monotonously, as if time were running out. However, a strong knock at the door drew everyone's attention. It was Aura, with an imposing and silent presence, his eyes fixed on the place where Yuri lay unconscious. It was as if Aura were leading everyone there to a moment of rebirth and hope. Dr. Vinicius, normally a man of strict science, was filled with questions and admiration. He realized that, in that instant, hope and faith had triumphed. Everyone in the room watched in awe as Aura, with his immense, tense body and eyes fixed on Pietro, seemed to stand at the center of an invisible magnetic field. With a gentle movement, Aura touched the glass of the incubator with his muzzle. It was a light but powerful touch, radiating a comforting energy. This gesture seemed to breathe life into Pietro, who then moved his fingers and showed a glint in his eyes. The monitors began to stabilize, and the baby's breathing became more regular. Lara felt a wave of relief and hope as she saw the baby fight for his life with the help of the imposing horse. Dr. Vinicius, in tears, realized he was witnessing something that defied all data and logic. The moment was a living miracle, with a clear message about the power of hope and faith as the hospital night wrapped itself in a calm and profound atmosphere. Aura, the horse, maintained his vigil beside Pietro, symbolizing the union of love, life, and destiny, while Yuri finally opened his eyes, showing an expression of emotion upon seeing his son.